But guys, what is up? Moxie here with the Path of Exile 2 update, and today we're going to be going over my updated guide to our Ranger starting build. Now, I put out a guide, I think it was yesterday, on a theory craft, and that was before the game had launched. I wanted to just kind of throw out a plan, so if you were just jumping into the game, you would have something to follow. I've now beaten the campaign. Our character is cooking. We've got lots of survivability. We've got tons of damage, and I kind of want to break down everything that you need to know about it. I do have a build doc with all of the stuff that you need to know, with pictures of our skill tree, ascensions, pictures of all my gear and stuff like that. But I do kind of want to give an explanation of the build and how to use the build, so that you can better understand it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get right into it. So to start, Path of Exile 2 is very combo based. We're not just relying on one skill to do all of our damage. We are going to be casting a lot of our skills all the time and using their synergies to output the most DPS as possible. Simply put, if you're just clicking one ability, you're not going to be putting out nearly the amount of damage that you can on this build. So let's talk about the skills and then the synergies and why I'm using the supports that I'm using. So to start, Lightning Arrow is a very solid skill. As you can see, it's got some pretty great DPS, and this chains to enemies. It does hit damage, and what we have found is that Lightning Arrow is really good at proccing Lightning Rod. Now, Lightning Rod, you may see, has lower damage, but we can put out a ton of these and overlap them all on a single enemy to put out a lot of damage. As kind of a term, we're shotgunning the enemy, where we're hitting them with a ton of overlapping damage from Lightning Rod. And so what we're going to be using is Lightning Arrow to proc that. Lightning Arrow is going to be doing a bunch of damage, but we're also going to be putting on Pierce so that it goes through all of the enemies and hits all of the Lightning Rods, and Martial Tempo so that we're attacking faster, so we can proc the Lightning Rods faster. And this is outputting a ton of damage. This is kind of our bread and butter combo. The basic part of it is Lightning Arrow proccing Lightning Rod. Now, Lightning Rod, we've got Primal Armament. For supported skills, deal 25% more weapon elemental damage. Scatter Shot, so that we fire more of these. We want multiple of these coming down at a time, and then we can shoot a lightning arrow into them and basically do that shotgunning effect. We're getting a bunch of damage. And then I've got Magnified Effect for more area of effect, just so that we have more of that overlap over different enemies, and we're getting more damage from that. Next up, we've got Rain of Arrow. We'll talk about that in a second. Rain of Arrow, you won't get the synergies for it until a little bit later. But the next thing that we're going to be using is Stormcaller's Arrow. Stormcaller's Arrow is awesome. This looks deceptively weak. It says it only does 70 attack damage. Its DPS is pretty low, 317. What you might not know is if we go over and click on the bolt, it's actually got 281 attack damage. You want to basically be casting this into every group, and this is a massive amount of single target. This is one of our highest damage abilities we have, and so this goes out all the time. You want to make sure that you're casting this kind of in between your lightning arrows and your lightning rods. Now, on Stormcaller's Arrow, it basically already has an 800% more chance to shock. We're going to want to make sure that it basically guarantees shocking on enemies, because with conduction, there's other shocks things that you could use. I'm using conduction because I really want this thing to shock quickly. And then we're using coursing currents. Shocking hits from supported skills have a 50% chance to also shock enemies in a 2.5 meter radius. So now we've got a wee spread shock, which is really, really powerful for us, and that's going to make enemies take a multiplier, right? Shock on enemies is a multiplier for all of our damage, and we can get things on our tree, such as Frazzled, to increase the magnitude of shock, where we're bringing shock up to a 45% increased damage on enemies. And so applying shock is not only a really high damage ability, but it's also going to increase the damage of all our other skills. Now, the other thing that we're going to be pairing with that is the Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder reads, when we kill a shocked enemy, which we're going to mainly be getting our shocks from Stormcallers, will cause our subsequent attacks to release lightning bolts, which deal attack damage to all surrounding enemies. So we fire the Stormcaller's Arrow. That when we kill that enemy, we'll get proc Herald of Thunder. Herald of Thunder, the buff, is going to give us lightning bolt strikes for our next 2 attacks after killing a shocked enemy with attack damage. This is going to give us a fair bit of extra damage. I use Execute on this. Supported skills deal 40% more damage with hits against enemies that are low life. Just you know, because usually this is happening towards the later part of our combo when this is proccing. It's going to help us finish off those enemies. Then I've also got Lightning Infusion to get extra lightning damage on this. Herald of Thunder is doing full like converted lightning damage, so I'm using Lightning Infusion on this. And then we get into some little bit more like added things. That's like the core of the build, and then we can add some extra things for spice. There's tons of different options that you could use. I really like Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows is a boss nuker. This thing puts out so much damage, and it's pretty contingent on us having a frenzy charge. We're scaling already a bunch of projectile damage, and we've got a lot of added lightning. So Rain of Arrows, just by default, is getting buffed by all the things that we're doing. And we're going to use acceleration on this, so the projectiles are coming down faster. Faster projectiles means more DPS. And we're also going to pair it with concentrated effect so that we get more area damage, aka 40% more damage, but those arrows hit in 50% less area of effect. What this does is it makes the projectiles all hit like overlapping enemies. If there's a big boss or something, all of a sudden all of your arrows are going to be hitting that boss. And this is what I use when a boss goes down. Anytime a boss gets stunned in that heavy stun and they can't move, I just rain down this skill, no pun intended, and that's where we're getting a ton of damage from. Now, in order to generate frenzy charges, we're going to be using Combat Frenzy. Combat Frenzy reads that whenever we electrocute an enemy, we get a guaranteed frenzy charge, which we're electrocuting all the time. And I'm pairing this with Herbalism. This gives us 30% increased life recovery from our flasks so that we're going to have more survivability. We are a ranger. There's a ton of flask nodes that help us, and like flasks are one of the biggest ways to sustain during boss fights. Now, for some like extra stuff, we're going to be using Voltaic Mark. This skill is awesome. It marks a target, making them more susceptible to being shocked. So now we have even more shock procs. And when the marked target dies, a lightning nova erupts from their corpse. This nova does not use your weapon damage, instead uses its own attack damage. So this is a 50% more chance to shock. And we're going to put this on elites, we're going to put it on bosses, and we can put it on packs to get more shock buildup and that nova damage. I've got this with persistence. This does cost a lot of mana, so if we're using persistence, it's up more often, and then we don't have to re-click it as much on bosses, which is a huge mana drain. And then we're going to be using Innervate. If we're shooting this and it's like novaing into a group, if it kills an enemy, for the next 3 seconds, we get 35% of our damage as extra bonus lightning damage. And that feels really good. Some very last things to touch on. I have been messing around with Tornado Shot. Tornado Shot just gives us novaing from our projectiles, and it's fun if there's a lot of enemies surrounding you. Instead of having to go have all your projectiles go straight, you throw down a Tornado Shot, and then all of your projectiles will go basically in a triangle and hit way more enemies. It basically is a big multiplier for our damage, especially with mobbing. And then lastly, I use Barrage. Barrage allows us to empower our attacks to fire additional times. Empowering things like Rain of Arrows is awesome. I like empowering my lightning rods so that I'm firing a ton of these down to just start spamming on bosses. And we're going to use it with less cooldown recovery, but we get twice as many cooldown uses because we're mainly using this for like big damage and bosses. And then premeditation skills cast by this get 15% more damage, so we're going to want to cast our big damage skills with Barrage. Let's go over the skill tree real quick. So we're going for projectile damage to start, and then we're going to grab increased projectile speed, increased attack speed, and dexterity. I strongly recommend immediately after going and getting Combat Alchemy. This is 10% chance for a flask to not consume charges. This is like can be a lifesaver in boss fights and increased life and mana recovery from flasks. This is also awesome. Don't go to this side yet. I want you to come over here and get these two nodes. This gives us 33% increased damage with hits against enemies affected by elemental ailments, and Clean Shot gives us a increased chance to pierce with our projectiles, which is just more damage for us. Now, early on, I do recommend socketing Flame Wall with Fortress support. Currently don't have the intelligence to put this on, but Flame Wall is basically a guaranteed ignite, and we've got some skills. Obviously, you're not going to get to like Tornado Shot till much later, but Flame Wall is a guaranteed ignite against enemies, and there's multiple nodes that we deal more damage based off of enemies afflicted with ailments, and so we can put that down for guaranteed ignites, and we can put down our shocks, and so that's kind of nice, and it adds flat damage towards us. Then we're going to go over this way. I recommend going up to these top nodes first. We can get Surging Currents for Lightning Pen And also Harness of the Elements, increase damage for each type of elemental element on an enemy with Flame Wall and our Shock. That is 30% increased damage. Then we're going to path over here and get the 2 evasion nodes. These are awesome for survivability. More movement speed, 30% increased evasion, and 60% increased evasion if we've dodge rolled. In the campaign, I got up to 83% increased chance to evade attacks, which basically means that if an enemy hits me, I instead just don't get damaged by it. We are evading all of the attacks, and that's a really large portion of our survivability. You want to make sure that you have good evasion rating and you're finding pieces of gear with high evasion rolls so that you're not taking damage from attacks. Then go Catalyst. This gives us increased elemental damage as well as fizz damage from our hits taken as a random element. This is really important because we do not have much physical mitigation. We're not going to have a ton of armor, and so this will mitigate those fizz hits into elements, which we will have resistances for. Then I recommend, it kind of is up to you what you feel like you need more. I really like Frazzled for 30% increased magnitude of shocks. This just gives us a bunch more multiplier, and it gives mana regen, which at this time was pretty important. Rattled gives us more shock duration, so when we do shock, we have more uptime on it. And then Maiming Strike's awesome. This is 25% more damage, and we have a 25% chance to just maim with our attacks. This gives us 30% slow on enemies and reduced evasion rating. That is incredible because we need CC on the build, and once you get this, you can kind of take off Vine Arrow, which is something that you can use to supplement some extra CC early on. And then once you get all of that, then we're going to come over to this left side, and then we're going to pick up Blur for some more movement speed, increased evasion rating, dex, but we're mainly coming over for this node, Heavy Ammunition. This is going to lower our attack speed. By the time that we get this, we'll have a ton of attack speed because we'll be using Tailwind, and it's going to give us more stun buildup, which is just awesome for bossing, and more projectile damage. And then I'm pathing over here right now for Spreading Shocks to have a 50% chance to spread as well, and then Thunderstruck for even more shock buildup. There's a lot of cool nodes that we can go towards. I'm not gonna say exactly what I'm gonna go because I honestly don't know. There's so many cool nodes. Electrocution gives us more electrocute damage on enemies, gives us another multiplier on them. There's these nodes over here that I really like, such as attacks penetrate enemy elemental resistances, and if we have a flask effect, we deal 40% more elemental damage, and that can connect directly to all of these shock nodes. So I think we're gonna have to head over here. And there's also some really cool nodes like acceleration for movement speed, skill speed, as well as the bow attacks for more pierce and more damage. There's a lot of options for us. I will be updating this guide basically all the time as I play more and learn more things. For our Ascendancy, I went Deadeye. I was going to go up to get Endless Munitions, but I just think Tailwind is so good. It's such a game changer. It gives us 10% increased movement speed, 30% increased skill speed, which is just casting and attack speed, which feels amazing, and up to 150% increased evasion. So everything that we really want. And once you get this going, you're just going to be putting out so much more damage with that 30% increased attack. And then I went Windward for the less damage taken per Tailwind. This is a lot of survivability. We're going to get a lot of attack speed. And every time that we're casting, we're just going to be taking less damage. We do lose our Tailwind on hit, but that's why I'm building Invasion is important, because if we have an 80% chance to evade attacks, and if we do get hit, we're not actually getting hit, and we can keep up our Windward stacks for those actual bigger hits. For gear on your bow, you're looking for something like this. This bow basically carried me most of my campaign. You're really trying to find 3 prefixes with added damage. Added damage is hard to come by in this game. It's a massive damage increase if you can get multiple sources of added damage. You're looking for Fizz, Cold Fire, and Lightning. And then attack speed on the bow is also really nice. If you can get a bow like this, it'll last you a very long time. I am currently using a Widow Hail crude bow, which gives us increased bonuses from our equipped quiver. If you find a crazy quiver, this can do a ton of things for us. For example, I've got added Fizz, added Lightning, crit chance, attack speed, accuracy, and chance to pierce an enemy. And so this is giving me a ton of damage because it's giving me so much more from all of these attributes, which are literally all things that we care about. So that's what I'm using. I just found this while I was playing. So that's great. On the gear, you're looking for gear with max life and resistances and evasion. Those are the 3 most important, max life, evasion, and resistances. not too much else that you're really looking for. If you can find a base with high max life and high resistances, you're good. For your gloves, I actually bricked mine by accidentally using a Chaos Orb, but you're looking for flat damage. I had like multiple rolls of flat damage to attacks, which was awesome. And then I actually used a Chaos Orb instead of an Exalted by accident, and now they're just significantly worse. So I do need to find a belt or a glove upgrade. On your boots, most important stat is movement speed. Please find movement speed. It helps with rangers so much, keeping your distance. On your belt, I strongly recommend finding recovery, increased life recovery from flash, increased flash recovery rate, things that will heal you a bunch. On my rings, just looking for, you can get some like additional stats and lightning res if you need like extra strength or intelligence. This is a good place to find some. On my amulet, I'm just using a random one that rolled with plus 31 spirit, so that I can get extra spirit for my reservations. That helped a ton, get a bunch of like auras and stuff going on early. And then for flasks, you're just looking for things that are going to heal you a bunch and give you a bunch of mana. There are some rare rolls where your flash just like automatically recover charges over time. Those can be massive for boss fights for like prolonged sustain. But yeah, that is our gear. Guys, this is going to do it for the video. I just kind of wanted to like go over quickly what I'm using. I hope you guys are having a good time on Path of Exile 2. It is a fantastic game, and I will continue to update our guide as we push more and more into the end game. I just beat the campaign though, so I wanted to like kind of have this like as a timestamp for like gear progression, because obviously if I updated it when we're in end game and said this is what you do to beat the story, a lot of things would be now irrelevant. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.
Nothing can stand against us. Progress comes with a heavy price. You will burn. To the greater good will burn. Survival requires brutal choices. The power of the mind. Minor setback. I can't give up.
Damn, dude, imagine if we had just one-phased him there. I don't even know if that's possible.
It cannot be stopped.
No, I will succeed. There is no escape. I will burn you alive. I cannot let my efforts be in vain. The destruction at Atsuater will be repaid 1,000-fold. Inconceivable. You will pay for this.
Oh, thank you. So hungry.
I plan for every contingency.
I need more mana.
You leave me no choice. This is not over yet. You think you can stand in my way? You think you can run?
Easy, baby.